already this
Terrible.
year. What's
The
your early
offense
look
is
at this
just
matchup?
very
Well,
vanilla right now, and
In a way,
we could have used this bye week to help Edelman, and it doesn't look like N'Keal Harry's fully healthy. Sanu has been a bust so far, and Brady is, it's not his fault what's going on. He doesn't have any time to throw the ball, and unless we establish the run on Saturday, it's going to be, I think, like a 20-point victory because we can't stop them when they run the ball.
20-point victory for the Titans, huh?
Well, if they're rushing the ball the whole game, it's going to take Brady off the field, and their defense it's not great, but it will do because they have some good pass rushers, which we'll get to Brady. So if we don't establish the run, it's going to be a tough victory. And their coach used to play for the pass, and he's got no fear going against Belichick here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think he's going to use every play in the playbook in Vrabel, and I think he's definitely like the type of guy to challenge Belichick. It sounds like you're pretty bullish on the Titans, Justin. If you had to call it, what are you ultimately lining up to call here? Are you saying the Pats are going to take it, or?
No, I think it's going to be probably like 24, like 17 or 24-21, something like that. I mean, I think we'll be able to stop them a couple times, but I just feel like I don't know how many more trick plays Josh McDaniels has, and I also feel like Vrabel knows the system. So it's going to be difficult unless and again, if we can stop the run, then I think it plays in our favor. But every running back we've played so far since like week 8 has run up and down the field against us.
Yeah.
So it's be tough. We got the worst possible matchup, and we didn't get a bye.
Yeah.
Which we needed.
Yeah, it's a pretty sobering reality here for Pats fans, and we appreciate you calling in, Justin, and giving your take here. It was definitely a tough day for Brady. You saw that pick six that he threw right, to Eric Rowe. Where it was just like right in front of Edelman. Go ahead.
I was going to say Eric Rowe, a terrible Patriot, intercepted Brady for pick six.
Yeah, I know. It was like brutal. Eric Rowe, watching him celebrate like he just won the Super Bowl.
Well, every time someone beats the Pats, it's like winning the Super Bowl, but I didn't think we were going to lose to the JV squad yesterday.
So you think it's all over for the Pats this year? I guess I'll leave you on this. How do you think the Pats? So if things are going down in flames this year, how do things kind of go moving forward? Is Brady hanging around here, or what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think that. I don't think Brady goes anywhere. I think Belichick kind of has him, in a position where he controls his contract, he controls everything. And if Brady goes somewhere else and it doesn't succeed, I think Brady will be looked at as more of a system quarterback rather than being the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Belichick's taken Matt Castle 11-5 one year. I'm not saying that will be the case again, but I'm more worried about the defense because all of those linebackers are free agents. So, and we haven't had a good draft in I don't even know how many years. So we don't have many good young players.
Yeah, it's been quite some time,
scary,
and they don't have a lot of studs under 25.
But every time we have a bad or season we don't meet expectations, Belichick goes pretty hard in free agency, and we do well the following year. So I don't think it's the end of the dynasty until Brady retires, and I don't think he's going anywhere.
Well, we'd like to hear your take out of Charleston tonight, and appreciate you calling in. Yeah, it was a tough day yesterday for Brady and the offense. Brady was bad, too many mistakes. And the Dolphins finished the year 5-4 after an 0-7 start. It was, Dolphins finishing pretty strong. And you saw it looks like these guys are definitely playing for Brian Flores. And I don't know, you just saw kind of in the locker room afterwards. And, I've been one of these guys that's kind of been on the Brady wall all year. Brady's not really the one. It's been the offensive line. It's been the running backs. I feel like yesterday it really was Brady.
It was Brady, yep.
And that was kind of tough to look at a game and be like, that really was Brady, in that spot where you had to have it. Brady talked about the opportunity that they had in front of them. And, I think a lot of people realized what it was and how special it was. And I think we actually have a clip Andy Reid thanking the Dolphins, and Ryan Fitzpatrick actually talking a little bit about how sweet it was to get a victory over Tom Brady and Belichick.
Accomplishment for our football team. All in all, great game, and hail to the Dolphins.
Coming into New England and winning a game in New England is no small task, and I've seen that firsthand lots of times with 4 years in Buffalo and 2 years with New York. So I know how difficult it is to beat them. I know how difficult it really is to beat them at home, and so I'm proud of what we did out there today, and hopefully with this win, we're gonna have a great plane ride home, and we'll go from there.
Well, it was.
And there you have it right there. A guy in Fitzpatrick who's played the Pats so many times and usually comes out on that opposite side, usually throws that back-breaking pick. Yesterday was flawless. I mean, he was kind of like what we look like when we were looking at Tom Brady going against the zone of the Steelers. It was kind of like Fitzpatrick was sitting back there. He took some tough hits, but he was 28 of 41, 320 yards, a touchdown. He played very effectively, almost Brady-esque.
Did not turn it over.
Did not turn it over, which when we look at Fitzpatrick, we're usually looking on those Jameis Winston-type numbers. Jameis Winston, I think we have to just talk about it real quick. What an incredible year for him. 5,109 yards, but 33 touchdowns, 30 picks. Just a guy that is kind of like the definition of insanity around the NFL now. They just keep playing him, and every year he churns out your 25 picks or so. It's been pretty bad for Jameis.
But your 25 TDs as well.
Your 25 TDs as well, and your 5,000 yards. Now, if I read off the guys that threw for the most yards, it sounds like the guys I least want to sign to a long-term So listen to this. Who threw for the most? Jameis Winston. He's a guy like in his prime. I don't want to sign that at all. Who threw for the second most? Dak Prescott. Third.
I'd rather have him than Jameis.
Would rather have him than Jameis. Jared Goff threw for the third most. Just signed a terrible big contract. Phillip Rivers threw fourth. And then you have Matt Ryan for $4,500, and he's on a terrible contract too. It's like all the quarterbacks. It's like after that the quarterbacks get good. It's like the top five we're kind of just throwing out for yards, but. Amazing that Jameis Winston, he kind of makes Vinny Testaverde look like a Brady type, with the amount of interceptions that he throws. It's just like you never thought in this day and age, I guess, with the way that these guys are throwing the ball, like Brady arguably had his worst season ever. He threw 6 picks. These guys nowadays, they all throw under 10 picks.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston's like in a league of his own. Like we talk about how running backs are dinosaurs. You don't see those 1,500-yard years except for out of guys like Derrick Henry, who the Pats are about to face. But, you're not going to see somebody throw 30 interceptions. It just hasn't been the way the NFL has been trending in this aerial offense where there's so much given to the quarterback and receivers versus the defense. So Jameis Winston, truly an incredible stat there. Almost as good as the what we have to give a little bit of a shout-out to is Christian McCaffrey with the 1,000.
Yep.
And going into the game, needed 67 yards, got 71. They said they were going to force feed him. Gotta love that. I kind of like when teams are like force feeding for a record.
Right.
You
right.
can kind of feel that happening. It was like when Tatum had his 39 the other night. They were just trying to get
like the Panthers gave them something to play for.
Exactly. The Panthers have not had much to. I think they started Will Grier in that game, so that was a tough game for him as the Saints kind of stomped them on the forehead with a little bit of momentum into the playoffs. Saints finishing their season with an exclamation point, as there may be some question marks in Carolina as you're talking about is it worth that year of Cam Newton? Is it going to be the year where they try to find a quarterback? I think we all learned that Kyle Allen can certainly look like a starting quarterback for a week or two, but is not going to be better than somebody like Cam Newton, who you've already invested in. But I thought that was kind of funny when you look at like the top 5 quarterbacks as far as yards. I feel like you really used to look at yards as a determination of like who was the best. And nowadays it seems like something you can kind of throw out a bit more. It seems more like TDs are kind of like a better gauge on who your top guys are. So I just thought it was funny. You got all these guys throwing for funny yards. Jameis Winston throwing for 320 yards a game. I mean, we used to think Peyton Manning, we thought the 250-yard mark barrier, to put you on pace for 4,000 was something that was incredible 10, 15 years ago. And nowadays, it's like 4,000 yards is something that these guys can get halfway through a season almost.
Yeah.
So, Jameis Winston, just kind of touching on his season as we're talking about some of these other quarterbacks. Fitzpatrick, who put together a great day. And as Justin and I were talking there, Eric Rowe with that pick six right in front of Edelman. It was that was an awful play that I feel like Brady never makes. It was almost like he plucked in between his two offensive guys to find the defender and throw it in there to Eric Rowe to just a walk-in touchdown. And I think Justin is right in that they drew probably, Mike Schlava, Mike in Medford was on these airwaves talking about how scary a prospective matchup with the Titans could be.
Yep.
And the Titans, the Texans sat their starters yesterday. So the 35-14 win isn't as good as, it kind of looks on paper. They did need a little bit of luck to get in there. But they are a team that's 7-3 after a 2-4 start. And you haven't had a quarterback that's been hotter than Ryan Tannehill unless his name was Lamar Jackson. So you're just dealing with kind of like the hottest team in the NFL, and you're dealing with a team that could be ripe for a Pats picking. Last year they beat the Pats 38-10, which was the most that the Pats have lost in the last 5 years. You've got a guy in Vrabel that's not going to be afraid to be the aggressor, be the guy that tries to pull. If they have a few reverse, I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee runs like 2 or 3 reverses in this game. Like, they're going to do some things to shuffle things up and try to give the Pats different looks.
Seems to be effective against this Patriots defense.
It does. And a lot of things have been effective against this Pats defense over the past couple of weeks where, we're not quite sure what this defense is. It was a game where you remove the Dolphins game. If the Pats only give up 6 points, they have the lowest scoring defense that Belichick's ever coached. Post that game, 27 points. It's a totally different defense that you're looking at. So, they did pretty well against the Bills last week, but it just hasn't been consistent enough. And some of these guys that they've allowed to do it, we talked about the running game and Derrick Henry. How good did Joe Mixon look against this team? Joe Mixon's been stifled by everyone, and Joe Mixon had a field day against this team. And you're going to be playing against a guy in Derrick Henry that was he looked like a bowling ball yesterday, just knocking guys off of him. And a guy that is leading the league in yards. They're definitely going to feed it to him. So, he's like 6'4", just going to be coming right down the pike. So you'll have to see what the Pats can do, and I think actually we have Ryan Clark kind of talking a little bit about it, the formula to score points against the Patriots, and it gets back to Derrick Henry and some of that ball control.
That the Titans can say we can lean on this?
Well, listen, the one thing Mike Vrabel knows, like maybe Matt Patricia and Brian Flores, is how to find ways to beat Bill Belichick. And he's going to understand that this starts and ends with Derrick Henry for him. Derrick Henry, now the league's leading rusher after 211 yards today, is a downhill physical running back that can get the yardage that you need to keep Tom Brady and that offense off the field. But it also doesn't make Ryan Tannehill one-dimensional. Start with Derrick Henry, then you move into the play-action pass with A.J. Brown, which we saw Devontae Parker get a little bit going today. And this defense, we saw it whether it was the Cleveland Browns, even the Cincinnati Bengals, the Washington Redskins, Baltimore Ravens, they've been susceptible to the run. But very early on in the season, this team was jumping out on teams, and they couldn't stick to it. If you stick to the run, the dam will eventually break. And that's what you have to do. You have to be diligent and consistent in knowing that you may not get it the first time, you may not get it the second time, but you have to wear on this team, keep them out of the end zone defensively, and you can now find ways to score points.
And there you have Ryan Clark kind of breaking it down, that formula to score points against the Pats. And Justin and I were talking about it, where they're going to give the ball to Derrick Henry. They're going to try to do a ball control offense. And I think the Pats kind of set this precedent last year on their way into the Super Bowl, with the ball control, keeping the ball away from teams like the Chargers and Kansas City and ultimately the Rams. And now you're looking at it for other teams to try to slow down some of these more high-octane offenses. Not like the Pats have the highest scoring offense. We talked about some of their struggles, but they have been able to score points. And you get into, if you're going to just keep running Derrick Henry, that's going to take up a lot of time off the clock. And you looked at how many things that opens up for that Tennessee team. Ryan Tannehill's been really effective off the play action, and Derrick Henry can catch the ball. He can run the ball in a number of different ways. He's not just kind of like that Adrian Peterson back where you'll see him on like first and second down. He's a back that can play all down, so he definitely poses quite the challenge for the Patriots, as well as Ryan Tannehill, who has been absolutely fantastic. 27 touchdowns, 6 picks, 7-3. This guy has just been absolutely on fire. So for the Pats defense that hasn't been able to step it up the last couple weeks, they're really going to have to. And we're going to find out who the boogeymen really are. If all those boogeymen T-shirts are going to get sent over to Africa, or if they're going to end up staying here, that's really going to get determined over the next couple of weeks, because this is a team that we really built ourselves on defense, and now they're not really able to. This was a team that was built on defense, running game, and not having a quarterback have to do everything that Brady's had to do the last couple of years in order to get a victory. This was meant to take a few things off the quarterback. And for this offense, I just think there's way too many things to overcome, and it's just going to be too tough to score against teams. The amount of points that you're going to need to score to hang with teams like the Ravens and the Chiefs, I think it's going to be too tough. But as far as looking ahead to Tennessee, I think there is a lot of reasons to be potentially okay with the matchup. If you look at Ryan Tannehill, he's 0-6 career against the Patriots and Bill Belichick. So, and they also have the best coach, the best quarterback. They have someone in Deion Sanders who's an absolute fan still. And we actually have a little bit of sound of Deion Sanders kind of talking about one of the reasons why he may not want to quit on the Patriots just yet.
They know that, but this team right here, the Patriots, they got something, man. They got something special. You cannot just count them out, especially when a guy named Bill Belichick is on the sideline and Tom Brady and Julian Edelman. Then they got arguably the best defensive player of the year at cornerback right now as well. So let me tell you something, guys. I will not give up on the Super Bowl champions. They're still the Super Bowl champions until another team wins it.
Sounds like on a scale of 1 to 10, that's about a 7.
And there you go, Deion Sanders, big believer in Tom Brady, Belichick, Edelman, always kind of talking about the power of those guys, not really betting against them. And I agree. Until the Pats lose this game or lose a game in the playoffs, you really can't say anything, because they've just proven us wrong so many times. We sat here last year, thought that they had no weapons. Everybody said they were done. And we're kind of saying the same thing at this point this year. So to say that they're completely done, you just can't quite do it yet. You can if you want to try to be some hot take artist, but, until they actually lose a game and you feel like they're going to be able to play at least decently strong. The game's in Foxborough, where they've been really good, almost unbeatable. So there are some things trending in the Patriots' direction as well. Game at home, a week to get back in the playbook. Maybe that loss that the Pats need in order to rebound. I certainly don't subscribe to that thing where people talk about how the Pats may have left something on the field, but maybe the Pats need that tough loss to kind of come back to earth, get a strong week of practice in. We'll definitely see. But we now look ahead to Baltimore with a first-round bye, as well as Kansas City with a first-round bye, and San Francisco was able to eke one out on the 1-yard line, a penalty on the 1-yard line that always just seems to plague those Seattle Seahawks. So San Francisco taking home the number 1 seed for the NFC as Green Bay just snuck out a win over the Lions. The Lions got up like 16-0 in that game, I want to say. They had a trick play to David Blau, the quarterback. So was a pretty good one. You saw the Lions try to give them the best shot with their backup quarterback. But Green Bay ultimately is going to be a team with a first-round bye. As the other games of note, you've got New England against Tennessee. You've also got Houston against Buffalo. So who do you like in that game? I'm probably taking Houston, but I mean, I think in that game, that's a game where the quarterback disparity is just so large, from Deshaun Watson to a guy like Josh Allen. I like Houston in that game. And then you've got in the NFC, you've got New Orleans that we talked about how they finished off their season. They're going against Minnesota, who finished off their season on a tough loss to Chicago. So Minnesota coming in at the 6th seed, not looking too good. Looking pretty primed for a loss, I would say, against New Orleans, unless for the 3rd straight year can something happen to interfere with a New Orleans win in the playoffs, because it seems to happen every year. Now, this should be an absolute easy upset special. You've got the 5 seed, well, at least as far as seeds are concerned, but you've got the 5 seed Seattle Seahawks against the 4 seed Philadelphia Eagles. Gotta like the Seahawks in that one, as well as Carson Wentz has been playing over the past couple weeks. I think all the magic ends there, and that's a pretty formidable opponent in Seattle. Like you said, like we said, they kind of took the 49ers all the way down and almost had that. They could. That was a game too where you win the game, lose the game, you go from 1st to 5th. So it's a pretty tough game. So Seattle in a good spot there at the 5th seed, playing away, but you gotta like their chances for a win over Philadelphia. Just feel like Philadelphia hasn't really been that complete team. They've been hurt. Miles Sanders is kind of the starting running back right now, so feel like they don't have all the pieces. And then just as far as the quarterback play, like I said, Russell Wilson is just the MVP, or playing really closely like one. So I think Seattle's going to end up taking that one, but pretty interesting first week here. Brian, as the seeds kind of come out here and you see the Pats get paired up against Tennessee, what do you think of Justin's assessment? Do you think we got paired up with probably the worst possible team that we could have played, or is there another team that maybe you feared more?
I would say that running attack of the Titans is the toughest matchup. But, Deshaun's shown that he can beat the Patriots, so I wouldn't have liked that one either.
Yeah.
But, the fact that they were going to be at home on Wild Card Weekend is the only thing that kind of gives you a little bit of confidence.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I think it's so crazy because, like I was saying, Tennessee's kind of that team that may be prepped to beat a team like the Pats, right? They're like coming off this hot win streak. They're 7-3, seemingly kind of winning over everyone. Everyone's buying into the coach. The secondary has come along pretty well. They have Logan Ryan, who's leading that secondary now. He's got 4 picks this year, and I think maybe a Pro Bowler or damn close to it. So they've kind of pulled together that secondary. Malcolm Butler's really been the only guy that didn't work out for them in that secondary.
Yep.
But they've got some big receivers now. A.J. Brown is a pretty big wideout. I think he's like 6'2" or so, if I'm not mistaken. So
having a great season.
Some bigger targets. I think he went over the 1,000-yard mark. So, they're a team that's shown that they're not afraid of the Pats. They're going to come in here. And you heard Mike Vrabel talking about it today. He said that it's going to be a snake's den or whatever. The Viper Den is what he was calling it in Foxborough. So I think he's going to have his guys primed and ready to play. And I think they're going to play I think they have a great matchup. I think they have like a great style that they're going to use to go against us with Derrick Henry and then the play action pass. I think that's really going to open up a lot against these linebackers who haven't shown that they can be the best in coverage. So we'll definitely see how that pans out. Again, I can't necessarily say that New England's going to lose a game just because you can't, right?
Until you see it, yeah.
I mean, you can, but it's like all those years where like Albert Pujols like the number one hitter, and you try to be like the guy that like comes in cute and tries to predict the year that it's like he's number one every. The Pats have been number one every year. To try to assume that this is going to be the one year where they stumble, fumble, don't make it to an AFC conference game, championship game, that's like, I mean, it's almost crazy to us with how many straight years that it's happened. It's almost like to predict against the Pats, it's just really tough because it's basically their birthright to get to the AFC championship game. So seeing them lose shy of that, you kind of feel dumb making that call. At least I do.
Yeah.
Now, Houston and Buffalo, I mean, that game doesn't really have my interest a whole lot. I feel like Buffalo was just kind of like that feel-good story this year, but I don't know how good they're going to be in the playoffs. I think it's kind of their victory was getting to the playoffs, but don't see them as much of a player in this game against Houston. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think this was a good, really good step in the right direction for Buffalo. I think they have some staying power with this roster and what they've seen at quarterback. But it's I think the Texans are kind of turning that corner to the sort of there's a very perennial aspect to what they're doing, and they're starting to get a little bit battle tested. I think they'll be able to take care of Buffalo.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Houston, we see them there every year, and whether they just kind of get wiped out in the first round or not, they're starting to stick around, and especially with that win over New England, it just seemed like they were never ever going to beat New England. So when they beat New England this year, that kind of gave the feeling where the Texans could be better than the Texans teams we've seen before, with a TJ Yates that throws 3 interceptions and off into the offseason you go. Against Cincinnati, it seemed to be like they would lose that first game to Cincinnati every year seemingly for about 3 years. Whereas now Deshaun Watson just seems to be like one of those quarterbacks where if you've got to put yourself in a corner and kind of take guys over Brady, he's almost kind of in that conversation, I would say. I'm probably still taking Brady, gun to my head, but Deshaun Watson is probably growing closer to that short list of guys that you might take over somebody like Brady. I think when you look at the numbers, it's pretty crazy. Because Brady this year, a lot of people want to talk about how poor his play was or how bad he was. If you look at some of the numbers, you look at 19th in QB rating at 88, 13th in touchdowns, 7th in yards. I mean, these are some pretty good numbers. 13th in touchdowns, 7th in overall yards. You're telling me that if this guy gets a offensive line, a couple more seasoned weapons that he can practice with, a tight end, a fullback who isn't a linebacker, and your most explosive player on offense in Week 17 being a Landon Roberts. I mean, he made a hell of a catch, and that was a bad throw, honestly. He had to turn backwards and make an incredible catch, and that just shouldn't be the case. That shouldn't be the case that's the most explosive play. I mean, anyway, it worked, but Brady, when you look at it, he threw for 4,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 8 picks. And if you ask me how many quarterbacks could have come into Foxborough this year, and for this team, with these weapons, with this offensive line, how many quarterbacks probably would have thrown for these numbers? I think that you can say that Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes, and then other than that, I mean, how many guys would you be that confident coming in with this team throwing for 4,100 yards, 28 touchdowns, 8 picks? I mean, those are pretty gaudy numbers, I would say, for what Brady has put up with this year. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, but at the same time, you look at the feel of how this year has gone, and it's just never really been there
Yeah.
when he needed it. Not in the way last year when you
Sure.
know when you had Gronk, when you had a healthy Josh Gordon who could kind of turn make a play, and you had a fully healthy Julian Edelman.
Yep.
None of those guys topped even, I think, 900 receiving yards or maybe 8 touchdowns. But it was there. It was there when they needed it. And this year, I just, the defense would score touchdowns on turnovers early. They played a ton of cupcakes early in the year. And when it got tough,
They folded.
yeah, they didn't have it.
Yeah, they don't have it. That defense, I mean, they're really just looking like it's kind of like any competition they played it. I mean, we said that the regular season didn't start until Thanksgiving or so, and it's basically been like every game that they've played since then, that defense really has not shown out. And like I said, even against a team like Cincinnati, Cincinnati was able to move the ball with pretty relative ease. So this is a team where we all kind of said in the beginning, are we okay with being able to win on defense? And we were for the first 8 or so games, but then it was we're playing all kinds of tomato cans. And yeah, I totally agree with you. It's been a game where it's been so frustrating this year as a fan, because it's been so tough so many times where the Pats are sitting there and you're like, if they could just put their foot on the gas, they would get away from that. If they could just score the touch. I mean, it was even that Eagles game, they were hanging out there 17-10 for so long before they were able to score something and just put them away. They haven't been able to drive with consistent with consistency or above 17, 24, 27 points. That just hasn't been there. They scored 33 in the Steelers game, the first game of the season, and then they scored 43 again. It was 43 in the second game against the Dolphins, but aside from that, you really haven't seen a whole lot.
And again, don't forget, the defense had a touchdown in the Steelers game. I think you had a return
I think they
touchdown.
had 2 touchdowns in the Dolphins game.
And 2 touchdowns in the Dolphins game, So
they played with a lot of short fields, and they really were not battle tested a lot too. A lot of those touchdowns that they did score, I think to your point, it wasn't like the 10-yard touchdown, it wasn't like the 80-yard touchdowns or 70-yard. It was a lot of short fields. They extend it for just what they need to. They get a couple first downs out of it, just enough to kick a field goal or just enough to score. But how many times have we seen them kind of piece it together all the way down the field, all the way with the right units? I mean, even the other day, it seemed like Julian Edelman really, he kind of seemed like he wasn't really on the field too much, right? It was we've seen guys disappear. There just hasn't been that churning of Edelman's caught it, White's got it, just all these guys catching the ball in unison. It seems like every guy needs to be on the field independently with Brady or so to have that type of success or whatever the case. Michel's only good when he's running out of the backfield, and then White's only good when he's catching passes. And so their offense has been very predictable this year because they run a personnel set that is very dependent on the back that they have, and they typically go with a run or pass based on the back that they have. So, you feel like Rex Burkhead's definitely the best back that they have, because he at least allows them to be able to give teams different looks. So, there's just some stuff there with the whole Brady. People just talk about how bad he's been, but if you look at some of these numbers and twist them around, it's just you'd easily take Tom Brady over so many quarterbacks in this league. For 4,100 yards, 24 touchdowns, 8 picks. Granted, it didn't look pretty, but it's been with a team that hasn't had the prettiest lineup all year. They've been trying to guess and trying to throw wrenches into the operation. They've added Sanu. They've added Brown. They've tried to coerce Gronk back into it. They've tried to do everything that they possibly could, really, to get this team some weapons. Obviously, they did not do it in the offseason when I think is really why Tom Brady probably isn't as happy this year, because you come into the season, it's like, okay, you guys tried to Band-Aid it up all the way through, bringing in some of these options last minute, but how serious were you guys in the offseason when I was looking at a season full of this coming up? So I think that adds to some of the disgruntled nature of Brady, and it opens up the big question that a lot of people are talking about. You know, did we watch Brady's last game as a New England Patriot? Did we watch his last home game as a New England Patriot?
I think it is a very strong possibility.
I think it's a very strong possibility. If you have to gun to head me right now, I would say that he's probably going to continue playing and play somewhere else. I just feel like there's something going on there where I just feel like Brady wants to play another 3 years, and I don't think the Pats are willing to give that to him. And I think at this point, that's all Brady wants. Brady just wants the commitment. I'm sure he wants the 3 years, $90 million, and we've got one ringing through here. Hi, you're on with Open Season. Who do we got?
Hi, this is Julian.
Julian?
Julian?
Julian, how you doing? What do you got?
Hi. I'm calling for Mr. Allen.
Yes, sir. You got him.
Excellent. Is this Billy?
Yes, it is.
Hey, Billy, I'm hoping to find out what you think the chances are of Tom and Giselle breaking up.
Tom and Giselle breaking up? I don't know. I think they're a pretty strong couple. I think it's all about the public eye, you know? Really.
That's what I think too. And they're so together. But I have hopes and dreams too, you know, just like Tom in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. What are your hopes and dreams?
Well, if Giselle ever goes out of the picture, maybe I can work my way in there a little bit.
So you think you'd have a chance with Tom? Is that what you're saying? Because if Giselle gets out of the picture, then you got a chance?
Yeah.
You're not making a whole lot of sense over there, Julian. You got a take, or you're just gonna talk in that Muppet voice?
Yeah, I think that Giselle, if she leaves, then Tom and I have a good chance.
Yeah, well, I don't think you guys have a chance at all.
Well, that's why I called the experts.
All right, well, good to talk to you, Julian. You really gave us some pretty insightful stuff to break down. You got anything else, or?
Well, I'm just hoping that they can win their next game, and I don't think that Tom can do it because his headspace isn't in the right area.
Yeah, where do you think Tom's headspace is, if you have to guess? Sounds like you have a pretty good idea of where it may be.
Well, I think he's trying to keep his team together, and his lady at home isn't helping him out.
Why are you so convinced that Giselle has something to do with this? You got some inside information?
Well, if you saw what happened when they lost to the Giants, and Giselle was defending him, and also throwing him under the bus for the concussion, trying to get him to retire, I think there's a battle of the bands there, if you will.
Yeah, well, I think Brady's going to keep playing regardless of what Giselle says, because it's kind of like his business.
My point. There's a rift, and I think I can exploit that rift. And if they break up, I might have a shot.
Yeah, I think you might have a shot. Definitely have a shot. I think he's got a shot. We're all about taking your shot. If you never know, if you don't take your shot, you might miss. So, good stuff out of Julian there. The NBA, I think we should maybe turn the page to the NBA a little bit. Do have a happy birthday to send out to LeBron James, the GOAT. 35 years old. I know you're not going to co-sign on that, but LeBron, 35, and actually just the other night got his 9,000th assist. And if you look at the guys above him, obviously I love LeBron, but if you look at the guys above him, you're talking about all-time point guards. You're talking about number 1, Stockton, number 2, Jason Kidd, number 3, Steve Nash, number 4, Mark Jackson, number 5, Magic Johnson, Oscar Robertson, Chris Paul. You're literally talking about the best point guards, point guards that average over 10 assists a game for a long, long time. So it just goes to show LeBron's longevity. It's crazy. 17 years in, decides that he wants to be the point guard, and rolling up on 9,000 assists. He is the only player ever to be top 10 in assists as well as scoring. And by the time it's all said and done, he may be the only player to be top 5 in both points and assists, because he's probably going to be passing Isaiah Thomas at some point this year, and probably up around like the Chris Paul, depending on if Chris Paul retires or not. He's in with striking distance of Chris Paul probably next year as well. So it's just some absolutely nutty stats when you look at it, because LeBron, to have 33,000 points and 9,000 assists, I mean, there's just nobody that's even close to it, as far as somebody that was able to dominate scoring, be over that like 25-point threshold, as well as being over that, 6-7 assist threshold. We just really haven't seen it for a long career like that. So, it's just some numbers that we continue to, marvel at as LeBron continues to write his legacy here. He was voted the male athlete of the decade also. So happy birthday to LeBron, and, just some crazy stuff out of the assist department. Like I said, you're seriously talking about the best point guards to ever do it, and LeBron's, etching himself up to the top 5 of that potentially. So, if he's the top 5 in assists and points, that'd be pretty crazy. He's top 10 in both right now, so we'll see how that goes. Now, the Celtics' decade leaders for points and rebounds are going to completely shock you. This was how crazy and topsy-turvy of a decade it was for the Celtics and how much turnover there was. Happen to hazard a guess for who scored the most points for the Celtics this decade?
I mean, how can it not be Paul Pierce?
It is not Paul Pierce.
I had a feeling you were going to say that, but I still...
And then somebody else for rebounds, and I think we've got one ringing through here. Hi, you're on with Open Season.
Billy? Hello?
Yeah, hi, you're on with Open Season. Who do we got?
Hey, this is Alex.
Oh, hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Hey, good, man. What do you got?
So I was just curious, your take on why is it that the Dolphins give the Patriots trouble every season towards the end of the season? I don't get it. The Dolphins suck this year. The Dolphins sucked last year. We lost to them. They seem to not be a very good team every year. In December, they always give us trouble. Like I can't make sense of it.
Oh God, you know what? I think you bring up an amazing point, Alex. I mean, I don't know if I can necessarily put my finger on it. I'd say the only thing is that it seems like, Flores really has these guys kind of playing for him. It seems like, I mean, it just seemed like yesterday was probably like a match of like everything going perfect. It was like, I feel like it was a game where we played Fitzpatrick so many times. He's come up on the other end. It just seemed like he was willing to stand in there that extra second, like take that extra hit. I don't know. I really felt like they kind of grittied that one out. I feel like it's kind of separate from like last year, that miracle one. I mean, that was a little bit different, but they always just do give us trouble, and it's when we play in Miami typically. But you know what? I'd say it's really tough to put my finger on it. The only thing I would say is, probably good coaching. I think Torres probably came up with a pretty good game plan and knows the system pretty well, and I think he had some pretty good buy-in from his guys, it seemed like. Yeah. But I mean, I can't put my finger on like anything as far as like year to year why they stink in the second game against the Dolphins, yeah, it always seems to trip them up. It's actually 2 years in a row that they've been tripped up by the Dolphins from having a perfect record in the AFC in the last game against the Dolphins. So it's pretty crazy because they are that team that, always seems to stick a dagger in us even when they're 5-11. But I can't quite put my finger on it. Let me go to, let's say it was Brian. Brian, you think there's anything to, why they kind of always stink against the Dolphins in the second half?
I mean, last year I think was a little bit more sheer dumb luck. But this year I think they just kind of overlooked them. Didn't just let their focus go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think there's much rhyme or reason to it other than, the Dolphins got kind of lucky last year, and this year just beat them. Their quarterback played better than our quarterback.
Well, I think last year you almost saw them kind of like take their foot off the gas. Like you saw them take McCourty out of the game and put Gronk in, and like that was kind of, they were getting too cute with the whole Gronk being back there, stopping that, and that ended up hurting them. I feel like this year, the last game, it was like all hands on deck, and they still couldn't win this. That's what's so scary about this last game. It was like all hands on deck. Before, I think, maybe you could say the Pats haven't taken the Dolphins as seriously as they need to, but I feel like yesterday they were taking the Dolphins as seriously as they needed to, and they just could not get it done. So, I don't know. The true answer for you, Alex, is we have no idea.
Yeah.
What do you think? If you have to guess something.
If I had to guess something, I think
if you got to put your finger on something.
I think it'd probably be the Dolphins suck at this point of the year every year, and the Patriots are always looking forward towards the playoffs, and we always have them in either the second to last game or the last game of the season. So wants to chalk up to being like, yeah, we'll win it. Like it's a given, but it doesn't end up turning out to be that way. And the amazing thing to me is, whether it's Flores or whichever head coach is down in Miami, it always seems, no matter the leadership, we always seem to have issues.
Yeah.
So
and you're definitely
it's hard to put my finger on it.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's some great stuff, Alex. We definitely appreciate that question. Anything else? Anything else on your mind tonight? A lot of stuff going on in the
Not
NFL.
Really. That's the one thing that's bugging me. That and the fact that Belichick didn't go for points at halftime against the Dolphins. That
was so un-Patriots-like too, right? To just kind of like lay on that.
If anyone can do it, Brady can do it.
Yeah. I thought that was a terrible miscalculation, and I still don't really understand the reason why. Did you happen to see what Belichick's reason was for why? Because
something about first down or something like that?
Yeah. I really never understood his it seemed like he kind of just like brushed the reporter off, but I didn't really get why they didn't do that. But, yeah, I totally agree. They should have gone for points, and especially when you have a guy like Brady. And I think it sends a message to the locker room, too. It's kind of like, we don't need to go for, like, every – you know what I mean? Like, kind of taking them not as seriously as, like, let's go for every point we possibly can. You said that it was a playoff game, so let's actually run through that wall and score everything,
Makes me think that they've kind of, like, lost faith in Brady a little bit to do what he's been doing in the past, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think they definitely have. I think they're not counting on Brady to kind of lead them out of, they're not counting on Brady to be able to like lead them to a 37-30 win anymore, right? It's like he's putting up 17, 24, 27. So in that case, we can't have a defense that gives up 27 points. So if we're not going to win on defense, then you need to be strong offensively, and they haven't been strong offensively. So that's kind of been the whole point. But,
yeah.
Hey, we appreciate you checking in with us tonight, man, and that's some great stuff. That's one that I've got to think a little bit harder about, why they kind of always suck against the Dolphins. I think that's a good point by you, that they probably just, they're like, oh, finally, we won our – and we won our 9 or 10 games or 11 games, and we're headed into the playoffs. So,
yeah,
I agree with you, man. And and we hope you have a good night and stay warm and Happy New Year.
Thanks, you too. Thanks for taking my call.
All right, take care. So good stuff out of Alex. I mean, he brings up something where, I really can't put my finger on that. I guess I would say that it is probably they look ahead to the playoffs every year, and they've got the Dolphins kind of coming down the stretch. Dolphins are usually 4-11, whatever the case, and it's just let's just get into the playoffs. But, we'll think about that one a little bit more. So we were talking about it, the Celtics decade leaders for points and rebounds. For points, it actually, and this, I was flabbergasted. Avery Bradley scored the most points for the Celtics this decade.
Wow. That is a shocker. That is not the name I would expect.
Right? And now how about this? Rebounds. Jared Sullinger.
Wow.
So that is how much turnover there was in this decade. That just shows you.
Well, that's right. Yeah, Pierce was off the team. He wasn't around much this decade.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's just you don't think it. You try to think about who actually stuck on this team long enough, and we've got one ringing through here. Hi, you're on with Open Season. Who do we got?
Yeah, this is Eddie B.
Eddie B. You're calling too late in the program. How you doing?
I know. It only took me a minute.
Oh, God.
The Patriots aren't good, man. The first 6 games of the season, who were the quarterbacks they went up against? Roethlisberger before surgery, Josh Rosen, Matt Barkley, Colt McCoy, Daniel Jones against without Ingram or Barkley, and then Sam Darnold after coming back from mono.
Okay.
And then they anointed them the best defense of all time since the '85 Bears.
Oh, they didn't say they were the best defense of all time, but
yeah, they did. And I'll tell you what, Belichick's not a good coach. He never has been a good coach.
Oh, God.
He makes more clock management mistakes than anyone in the league. He just gets bailed out by Brady. And now guess what? Brady's got no weapons, so he's not good anymore either. Time to hang it up.
Oh, come on. So, who do you think is going to win this? Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl, Eddie?
New Orleans.
New Orleans. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, I know you come.
That's all I got, buddy.
I know you come fast and furious.
Before the break.
All right, man. Hey, Happy New Year.
All right, buddy.
Well, it's as simple as that. They both just suck. Why
heard it there.
Why didn't we
Eddie B.
just say that? Yeah. So a more concise way of putting it from Eddie, but yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to say to that, but more clock management mistakes than anyone. Ed used to do this thing where he would do a Monday morning quarterback and hammer all the coaches that made coaching mistakes for the clock or whatever, and he was actually really good at it, going around that's why he hated Tomlin so much, because Tomlin used to mess up the clock all the time. But I don't know. I don't think we can find. I think we can all count on one hand the amount of mistakes that Belichick's made. So I think we can nullify Eddie's point. Pretty easily.
Walk
there.
that one back a little bit, Eddie.
Yeah. Well, that's why he comes on quick and drops, and that's what we're gonna do as well here as we end another edition of Open Season. We appreciate you guys on the holidays, making the effort to tune in on a Monday. Switched it up. We did it on a Monday, so we'll be back on Tuesday next week, back in our regular slot. And for Brian, I'm Billy, and we'll catch you next week. I'm just not sure that Kyler Murray is big enough. This is Tom Brady. He's not just going to retire. Whitey, big fan of the show. Appreciate I've got Brian Murphy to my left, making sure everything's smooth, crispy, buttery. James Harden is systematically ruining the game of basketball. He's the most overrated player I've ever seen.